The law works in various ways, too. There's far more law out there shaping society than just criminal laws. Our laws are drafted to help us resolve conflicts, to punish offenders, and to provide remedies to those that have been harmed. The law also facilitates social change and creates what's known as public policy. Let's talk about each of these functions for a bit. Understand that when laws are broken, the dispute does not always wind up in court. Lots of social disputes are resolved by way of mediation, negotiation, or arbitration. The laws define the issues and what social expectations should be, and the aggrieved parties meet to work out the issues. Laws can define when the social compact has been broken and allow for punishment and remedies. Not all punishments involve jail sentences either. They can include monetary fines or some sort of an award to make a person whole again. When this happens, the punishment can be more of a remedy, like when someone's rights have been taken away, such as a civil rights action. So the remedy could be a monetary amount to make the person who suffered from discrimination whole, to replace lost wages, or a monetary amount to compensate for the suffering from the stigma of discrimination. Our laws promote social change too. Think about how the law creates a social benchmark. It's helping people understand what should be happening in the future. So we could acknowledge that the social world and its norms and values is a constant work in progress. Those values might be changing over time. So when I refer to public policy, I'm referring to what the government is doing, and that would be referencing any kind of public official who's influencing or determining public policy. Could include school officials, city council members, county supervisors, people like that. So the government has the ability to decide what they're going to do or what they're not going to do about a problem that comes before them that they're trying to consider and possibly take some sort of action on. So public policy has a number of very important key attributes. Public policy is made in response to some sort of issue or problem that requires attention, and public policy is what the government chooses to do or not to do about a particular issue or problem. So a great example of that would include not only the laws, but also what kind of funding priorities an agency might have, or the administrative law regulations that support certain kinds of social positions. So then you might want to think about how those policies support certain types of social positions. What kinds of attitudes or cultural ideals or accepted roles of people does the policy imply? An example of that is the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the funding of the United States Department of Justice, their Office for Civil Rights. By creating funding for that office, the U.S. government was then able to enforce the civil rights laws that were passed in 1964. So it's not just the laws that affect public policy, it's also how those laws are enforced through the regulations and the resources that are allocated for them. The players in the law will affect how the laws are written and what resources are allocated to enforce those laws. Our legislatures, and I'm referring to those people that are elected to the Senate and the House of Representatives when I refer to our legislatures, they are the people that write the laws. We know that most of our legislators have upper middle class backgrounds and that they're predominantly white and that they're predominantly male. While more women and non-whites are getting elected to office, there's no proportionate representation of the American people by race and gender in Congress. Additionally, there's another group of enforcers, the police and law enforcement, and that includes federal, state, county, and city or municipal officers. Law enforcement has a gatekeeping function in that they investigate and then charge people with criminal offenses. And we also have federal and state agencies that also assist in the area of civil enforcement, like the Office of Civil Rights that I just mentioned. What's important to understand is the function of law enforcement as gatekeepers. While the legislatures write the laws, law enforcement are the people who have the day-to-day interaction with the public. And when officers have preconceived notions of people or harbor implicit bias, this interferes with the ability to enforce the law even-handedly. We know that the police tend to use force more often on blacks and Latinos than non-whites. There's been a great deal of discussion about the issue of bias and what's known as racial profiling, which causes officers to pull over non-white people more often as targets within the community. Judges and lawyers are most often white males from higher socioeconomic backgrounds. To become a judge or a lawyer, a person has to have both a college undergraduate degree and a 3-year professional degree. This rules out people with lower socioeconomic status. Judges are the people that maintain the rules and the order of the courtroom proceedings. In the case of non-jury trials, what would be known as a bench trial, the judges also try a fact and will make a decision regarding the parties' responsibilities towards each other. In the higher appellate courts, which oversee what the trial courts have done, judges make decisions about how the laws should ultimately be applied. And in our federal system, the United States Supreme Court is what's known as the highest law of the land. The 9 Supreme Court justices decide how the laws of our country and the Constitution are to be interpreted. So you can't appeal a case to any other decision maker once it's been ruled upon by the U.S. Supreme Court. Like almost all our social institutions, the U.S. Supreme Court has been dominated by white males. When judges are the people responsible for interpreting the laws and controlling the courtrooms, you can see how the values and norms of this group of people could easily be advanced and be perpetuated through institutional discrimination. Another group of people that has an impact on the law are correctional officers. How corrections personnel carry out their duties has an impact on whether the sanctions are seen as rehabilitative or punishment-oriented. A large majority of correction officers are male, but also consider that a large number of the residents that are in correctional institutions are male as well, the prisoners. Now, there does tend to be more racial and ethnic, as well as diverse educational backgrounds of people who are in corrections than there is for those that are working in the legislature or the courtrooms. The attitudes towards offenders by the correctional staff and the attitudes of those writing the policies in the correctional institution will have a strong impact on the experiences of those that are being housed in the institutions. Our laws are shaped by the social context in which they are drafted. Our laws reflect the current social values, the norms, and the ideologies of that current period in time. The idea of a reality construct is that 3 different aspects of society produce the final outcome of the law: the social conditions, the social ideas, and the people and groups within society. Almost any law can be analyzed using the framework of reality constructs. Those with higher socioeconomic class wind up with various advantages when they deal with the legal system. Bail bonding is a system that is advantageous to people with more resources. If a person doesn't have the financial resources to post bail, then they await their court date in a local jail. People with more money can afford to pay for the services of better and more experienced attorneys as well. And there can be class bias regarding what crimes are being targeted by the police. For example, drug task forces or marijuana suppression initiatives. What kind of fine or sentence the person is subjected to can have a class bias as well, such as the differences in sentencing people who have possession of cocaine versus the sentencing for those that have possession of crack cocaine.